Car prices have risen as much as 33% in the last 10 years. Leasing prices up 36%. Wages have only gone up about 25 to 27% before tax earnings. We're losing touch with the ability to buy a new car. Canadians are seeing it even worse. This is now a marketplace where it's clearly the have and the have-nots. Have you been thinking about why the fact that you've got sticker shock, you walk on a car lot and you're looking at these prices and you realize, where do these prices come from? How did they get here? There's no way those cars are worth that kind of money. I've been showing you a lot of these prices recently with full-size F-150s that now Lariat form, which is sort of a mid-trim, and now those vehicles are up in that $80,000, $90,000 territory. Platinums, $110,000 plus. How did we get here? Now these are Canadian prices and Canadians are seeing it even worse. Now, of course, with the imminent taxation increases with tariffs, things are about to get even worse. But even still today, with the way things are shaping up, can you even afford to buy a car? The average transaction price. Now, a lot of people are choosing to buy trucks and SUVs. They're much more popular than the smaller cars. You'll notice a lot of the cars are going away. Have you been looking at the industry as a whole? General Motors pretty much just gave away all of their cars. They're not doing that anymore. Same thing with Ford. Ford's no longer selling cars. And really, the only place you can find a sedan these days in a few luxury car segments, or even specifically Toyota and Honda still sells a few of those. But realistically, most car brands have almost all but given up on their car sales and go exclusively to SUVs, which is clearly a growing trend. But that has cost consumers money. Now, not for rightful cause. I mean, realistically, there's no reason that an SUV should cost more than a car when they use the same engine, gearbox, and platform. But because it's all supply and demand, prices keep going up. Well, the average transaction price in Canadian prices, according to DesRosiers Automotive Consultants, they're actually saying the actual transaction selling price in Canada before taxes, before extras, that's just the core price of the vehicle back in 2023 was up to $53,100. That's up 29% from 2019 when it was only $41,000 and change. And go back 10 years to 2014 and the average transaction price of the automotive sector in Canada was only $33,400 for a brand new vehicle, of course, plus taxes. Now, adjusting for inflation, you're looking at over 30%. Now, we've seen certain sectors go up drastically more. A lot of truck manufacturers are jacking up more. We're seeing more like 30, 40, 45% increases in the last 5 years. But if you blended average, the automotive industry has seen an adjusted for inflation increase of at least 30%. Again, pre-income levels have only gone up from 25 to 29%. So that leaves us scratching our heads. Where do we make up the difference? Well, a big part of that is the enabling that's been going on with the banks. The banks have been a big part of supporting the automotive sector. You come up a little short, that 5, 10, 20% that you make less relative to the buying power of and the purchasing price of that new vehicle, well, guess what? The banks had us covered. How did they do that? Well, they gave us longer loan terms, 96 months, 84 months. So you couldn't afford it on a 5-year term. Well, can you afford it on a 6 or 7-year loan term now? Yeah, maybe. And see, that's the problem that we're faced now. These vehicles are just too damn expensive and we're having to resort to some desperate measures. But where desperate measures comes desperate times and even more desperate people. People are paying money that they don't really have. They're borrowing longer loan terms, more money to pay for these cars that largely they don't really need. But then there's a little discrepancy in the data. But when we look at the Canadian Auto Trader's online data, it actually shows a different set of numbers. As a matter of fact, the high prices of brand new vehicles, all the way up to $65,219 by the end of 2024, scale back a year earlier when it actually peaked at $67,000 and change, showed that there's absolutely ludicrous amounts of money. That's the average price of a new vehicle that these dealers were asking. That's the asking price you're finding on the data according to Auto Trader online data. Regardless, if you're talking $65,000, $67,000, even 60 grand is a hoard of money. But then how did we get the average transaction price down closer to $50,000? Well, that's largely because people aren't buying all of those expensive trucks and SUVs, because a lot of those trucks, SUVs that we're finding on the traders are coming from dealers. Dealers are marketing them online, and we're seeing a lot of those prices dragged up. We're seeing a lot of those asking prices in that 60, 65, 70. And as I've already mentioned, it's very easy to find brand new trucks in that $70, $80, $90,000 for half tons, and diesel trucks in that $115,000, $120,000, $135,000 for the premium diesel trucks. Shows that prices are extraordinarily high. But the fact that we're seeing transaction prices slightly lower means that there's a selected bunch of buyers that are going for lower cost-effective vehicles, looking for deals, the big incentives at the end of the years. Clearly, there's a lot of push at 2023, and then, of course, last year in 2024, that's when all the dealers decide to push hard, provide big incentives, interest rates adjustments, and get you in their vehicle. They need to make their quotas. But that doesn't change the fact that these prices are extraordinarily high. And when you consider Canadians' average full-time worker makes about $76,000 as per statistics, that basically puts the average worker having to spend more than a year, close to a year and a half, of dedicated after-tax earnings to pay for that new vehicle. But you know that doesn't happen. We have to pay for that extraordinarily expensive food. I mean, I was in the grocery store the other day and I was looking at a package of chicken, 4 pieces in there, and it was wrapped up nice and neatly. 4. It used to be 6 or 8 we used to get in the same package, but now 4 of them, and it costs $23. A loaf of bread, $6. Even a small package of pepperoni sticks now is at $12, $13. I mean, these are prices that have gone up 40, 50% in the last 4 or 5 years. Things are getting absolutely out of hand. And of course, the cost of living crisis is catching us all off guard, and less people are affording or able to afford new vehicles. Food as well seems to be a stickler point, and the struggles are real. But why are these vehicles so expensive? And let's give you some examples if you're not sure. Car Cost Canada statistics, we're going to give you some examples. Honda CR-V from 2019 to 2025, it's gone up 32% in the base sticker price. In 2019, it went from about $27,000 in change to 2025, it currently stickers at $36,000 and almost $500. The base Jeep Wrangler's another one. We know Stellantis has been extraordinarily overzealous in pricing their vehicles, but the base Wrangler is one of those that's gone up in the same 5 or 6 year time frame by 31%. They've gone up 10 grand. The Toyota RAV4 has also gone up by about 28% since 2014. But if you look at the upscale versions like the loaded up limited all-wheel drive version, it's gone up as much as 36%. Now we're infringing on 40% in 5 or 6 years by the RAV4. Now some of those we have to realize are coming from the plug-in hybrids as well, and those they were commanding a huge dollar. Toyota was holding stiff and sturdy, and I shared that story with you last year when I walked out to a dealer and they basically said, hey, we have one available, but we're holding it for a customer. If you want it, you're going to have to pay us an extra $14,000. And I showed you that on a previous video. I gave you the invoice, the quote that they told me that they were charging me $12,000 for paint protection film and a little bit of undercoating, strictly because they could. And they openly admitted to that. Toyota was notorious for holding on and saying, look, due to low inventory levels, we're going to charge you a little more. So market adjustment fees have also had a major impact, and Toyota is one of those that we've seen some big numbers going down there. Same thing with Stellantis, Jeeps, Rams, all products that we've seen big increases over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. The base Honda Civic is another example. One of the most popular cars in the space, reliable, fun, sporty, but expensive now. They've gone up 44% for the base Civic in the course of the last 10 years or so. Clearly an obscene amount of money that people are paying for popular new models. Well, many people chalk it up to greed. Absolutely, there's a lot of that. Opportunistic, supply and demand. There's a multitude of different reasons for that. Some of the technology, a lot of, these OEMs are going to justify and say, well, it's technology. We're putting the big screens. We have all these haptic capacitive controls, this new technology. Yeah, that sounds like smoke and mirrors. If you had a panel with 30 buttons on it, to me, that's a lot more expensive to manufacture and supply than one screen. And we know how cheap screens are. They're basically throwaway little glass screen, and a lot of those electronics now are all combined in one module. So one module, a little bit of programming, and away it goes, as opposed to a multitude of different buttons and knobs. It's debatable about a lot of this new technology. Granted, yeah, there's some backup technology, backup cameras, we have sensors, and some of those other features can provide increases in some of this cost, but let's not get carried away. We've seen a lot of changes in the manufacturing of a lot of these vehicles too, and there's cost-cutting measures happening. Why are a lot of these vehicles now failing? Because, in my own personal opinion, I've seen cost-cutting measures. Supply chain, outsourcing materials, bearings, parts, and sourcing some of these parts from outside of the country in lower cost jurisdictions means that where it seems like a lot of this technology should add up for increased costing, the flip side is a lot of that is offset by the outsourcing and purchasing of cheaper markets. So if you're like me and a lot of other shoppers and you're walking around and you're looking at the car dealers and you're thinking, wow, that's expensive. Well, you're not alone, because we're all seeing that. We're all seeing the writing on the wall. And this is currently, as we speak today in March, early March of 2025. Things could turn the corner, and things are only going to get far more expensive. With these tariffs that are being applied to a lot of these domestic products, GM, Stellantis, even Hondas, now that are being built in places like Canada as well as Mexico. With these tariffs, that's only got one place to drive these prices. That's right, it's up, not down. So as we tread through 2025, we're guaranteed to see and welcome a new host of pricing on a lot of these new vehicles, and likely it's going to be an ever increasing high value to any new vehicle you're looking at signing on the dotted line. Now, with that said, I'm always going to offer the best advice that I can. Always buy within your means. Always live within your means. Buying a new vehicle is always wonderful. It's one of the most exciting experiences of your life. You know, going, signing of the paperwork, picking out your favorite colors, your features, your trim levels. And then that day, the delivery day where they bring that vehicle to you. And of course, you go pick it up. You get that shiny new car. And next thing you know, you're driving off this beautiful new car with a great paint job and new technology. It feels wonderful. It's great to buy your new vehicle. But you should always live within your means. And in doing so, I always recommend that 3 to 5 year loan term max. If you can pay cash, even better. And ultimately, if you can pay cash, sometimes they're going to give you a better deal if you take their in-house financing. If you want to do that and you've got the cash, take the financing, assuming they don't have that weasel clause. In other words, if you're able to pay off that car early with no penalties, take their financing. If it gets you a better price, then drive it for a month, pay it off with your cash, and move on. Remember, as soon as we start taking on loans of more than 6 or 7 years, now we're extending it out and we're finding ourselves in negative equity. So if you wind up you're 4 or 5 years in and you decide, I'm getting bored of this vehicle, I want to trade it in, it won't be a shock to you that you'll be in negative equity. In other words, you'll probably have more owing to the loan or to the bank for that vehicle than it's worth as a trade-in for your next vehicle. And sadly, a lot of people are rolling that over and will never get out of debt and will constantly be in this rotation of flipping vehicles, trading vehicles in, and constantly feeding the beast. You'll never get out of hock. So always live within your means. Try to target that car that you need. Know what you need. Pick out your features and options in advance so that when you walk into the dealership, they're not trying to convince you to buy something extra that you don't need. Anyway, as always, with that said, where do new vehicles go that don't sell? There's a lot of them out there. I mean, it was a tough couple years. You're going to want to find that video. It's absolutely amazing. Gives you the whole story. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. See you all real soon. Bye-bye.